The thing about being the man who fixes what nobody else can is that nobody believes you when you look like the man who mops floors. 3 years I worked the night shift at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. 3 years, 11 months and 14 days. I wore the same gray uniform. I pushed the same mop bucket. I emptied the same trash cans in hallways where men with PhDs walked past me like I was furniture. They never made eye contact. They never said good morning, even at 2 a.m. when morning was technically already here. I was the night janitor. I was invisible. That was the arrangement. Welcome back again. Get comfortable, grab something warm, and remember, the people in these stories always had a choice. They just forgot that so did he. Drop a comment and subscribe. You're going to want to be here for this one. My name is Arthur Vance. I am 47 years old. I have a daughter named Macy who is 8 years old and believes the moon follows our truck home because it likes her. She has one specific habit. Every night before bed, she draws one picture of what she thinks I do at work. For 3 years, she drew mops, buckets, a man in gray pushing a cart. She never asked why. She just drew them. I kept every single one in a folder in my locker at the JPL, all 1,089 of them. I did not tell her what I really did there. That was the arrangement too. I grew up in Barstow, California. My father worked the night shift at a copper mine for 31 years. He came home with red dust in his hair and hands that shook from the vibration of the drill. He never complained. He fixed our truck in the driveway every Saturday with a toolbox that had his initials burned into the lid. AV, Arthur Vance SR. That toolbox sat on the passenger seat of my 1998 Ford F-150 every morning when I drove to Pasadena. It weighed 14 pounds. The latch was broken, so I kept it closed with a bungee cord I bought at Home Depot for $3.49. I had been meaning to fix that latch for 2 years. I never did. Some things you leave broken on purpose. They remind you of what you have not finished yet. Macy lived with me full-time. Her mother passed away 4 years ago. Ovarian cancer. 11 months from diagnosis to funeral. I do not talk about it. I talk about Macy's drawings. I talk about what we will have for dinner. I talk about whether the moon is actually following us. I do not talk about the fact that I used to design guidance systems for interplanetary probes. I do not talk about the fact that I left NASA in 2019 after a review board said my algorithms were unconventional and not peer-reviewed to institutional standards. I do not talk about the fact that I took the janitor job because it paid $23.40 an hour, had health insurance, and let me drop Macy at school at 7:45 a.m. and pick her up at 3:15 p.m. I mop floors. I am invisible. That is the arrangement, but arrangements change. They always do. You just do not know when. It started on a Tuesday, October 17th, 2:14 in the morning. I was emptying the trash in Building 179, the Advanced Propulsion Lab, when I saw it. A whiteboard covered in equations that I recognized immediately. Orbital mechanics. Gravity assist trajectories. Someone was working on the Europa Clipper mission's final approach vector, and they were doing it wrong. I stood there for 7 minutes. I counted. The error was in the 3rd line. A miscalculation of the gravitational influence of Jupiter's moon Io during the 22nd flyby. It was small. A decimal placed 1 position off. But in space, 1 decimal is not small. 1 decimal is the difference between entering orbit and burning up in an atmosphere you did not know you were hitting. I had written a paper on this exact problem in 2017. It had 34 citations. Nobody at JPL had read it. Why would they? I was the man who emptied their trash. I looked at the whiteboard. I looked at my mop bucket. I looked at the Casio watch on my wrist that Macy had given me for Father's Day. It cost $22 at Walmart. It still worked perfect. I thought about my father. I thought about his toolbox. I thought about the latch I had not fixed. Then I picked up the dry erase marker from the tray and I corrected the equation. 3 lines, 14 seconds. I put the marker back exactly where I found it. I emptied the trash. I left. That was the last normal morning. I did not think about it again for 11 days. I mopped. I emptied trash. I wiped down the same whiteboards in the same conference rooms, where the same men with the same degrees talked about the same problems they had been talking about for months. On the 12th day, I saw Dr. Helen Voss. She was the project lead for the Europa Clipper trajectory team. She was standing in the hallway outside Building 179, talking to a man in a suit I did not recognize. She was holding a printout. She was angry. I could tell by the way she held the paper. Like it had personally offended her. "Somebody changed the board," she said. Her voice carried down the hallway. "Somebody corrected the I/O perturbation calculation. And nobody on my team knows who did it." The man in the suit said something I could not hear. Dr. Voss shook her head. "No, this is not a prank. This is a correct solution. We ran it through the simulator. It works. It saves us 8 months of trajectory correction burns. Do you understand what I am saying? Somebody solved a problem my entire team has been stuck on for 6 weeks, and they did it in 14 seconds on a whiteboard." I pushed my mop bucket past them. Neither looked at me. I was furniture. I was the arrangement, but I filed it away. I would need it later. That night I told Carlos. Carlos had been the day shift security guard at JPL for 19 years. He was my only friend there. His specific quirk was that he never gave advice. He only asked questions. That was his rule. 1 question per conversation, never more, never less. I found him at the guard station at 6:45 a.m., right before my shift ended. He was eating a breakfast burrito from the food truck that parked outside the main gate. He always got the same thing. Egg, potato, no cheese. He said cheese was a lie invented by people who did not respect the potato. "Something happened," I said. Carlos took a bite of his burrito. He chewed. He swallowed. He asked his question. "Did you do something you cannot take back?" "Yes," I said. He nodded. He took another bite. "Then you already know what comes next." I did not know what came next. But I would find out. 3 days later, they installed security cameras in Building 179. Small ones, discreet. I noticed them because I am paid to notice things. A loose thread on a carpet. A fingerprint on a glass door. A camera the size of a thumb mounted above a whiteboard. I did not touch the whiteboard again. I did not need to. The problem I had solved was already solved. But I started looking at the other boards. The other printouts left on desks. The other problems left half-finished in offices where the lights stayed on until 3 a.m. I found 3 more errors in the next 17 days. A thermal shield calculation in Building 182. A communications array frequency in Building 175. A fuel mixture ratio in the propulsion lab. None of them were as serious as the I/O miscalculation. But all of them were wrong. All of them would have caused delays. All of them would have cost money. I did not touch any of them. I wrote them down in a pocket notebook Macy had given me. It had a unicorn on the cover. The pages were pink. I wrote in pencil, small and neat, in the margins of her drawings. I did not want anyone to know. That was still the arrangement. But someone was watching. On November 3rd at 1:47 a.m., I was vacuuming the carpet in the main conference room when the door opened. I did not look up. I never looked up. Looking up meant acknowledging that you existed in the same space as someone else. Looking up meant breaking the arrangement. "Arthur Vance," I looked up. "Doctor." Helen Voss was standing in the doorway. She was not wearing her lab coat. She was wearing a sweater that looked like it had been knitted by someone who loved her. Her hair was down. She looked different without the armor of authority. She looked tired. Dr. Voss, I said, I can come back later if you need the room. No, she said. I need to talk to you. I turned off the vacuum. The silence was louder than the machine had been. I stood there holding the handle, waiting for whatever came next. I had been in this position before, in 2019, standing in front of a review board, waiting for them to tell me that my work was not good enough because it did not come from the right school, the right program, the right pedigree. I knew how this ended. I went very, very quiet. The security cameras, she said, they showed you in Building 179 on October 17th at 2:14 a.m. I said nothing. You corrected the equation, she said. You knew exactly what was wrong. You knew exactly how to fix it. And then you put the marker back and you emptied the trash and you left like it was nothing. It was nothing, I said. It was a whiteboard. I clean whiteboards. You do not clean whiteboards, she said. You solve problems that my team of 12 PhDs could not solve in 6 weeks. And you did it while wearing a janitor's uniform and pushing a mop bucket. So I need you to tell me something, Arthur. I need you to tell me who you are. I looked at her. I looked at the vacuum in my hand. I looked at the Casio watch on my wrist. 1:52 a.m. Macy would be asleep. She would have drawn her picture before bed, probably another mop, another bucket. Another man in gray that she thought was her father. I am the night janitor, I said. That is who I am. Dr. Voss stepped into the room. She closed the door behind her. The click of the latch echoed in the empty conference room. I thought about my father's toolbox. I thought about the latch I had not fixed. I thought about Macy's drawings. I thought about all the things I did not talk about. I read your file, she said, or what exists of it. You worked at NASA Goddard from 2012 to 2019. You designed guidance algorithms for the Maven mission. You published 11 papers. You have 847 citations. And then you left. The official record says voluntary resignation. But I know what that means. I have seen it before. I said nothing. You were pushed out, she said, by people who did not understand your work. By people who were threatened by someone who did not follow their rules. By people who looked at you and saw someone who did not belong. Am I right? Dr. Voss, I said. I have 23 trash cans to empty before 6 a.m. I do not have time for this conversation. Make time, she said, and there was something in her voice. Not anger, not authority, something else. Something I had not heard in a long time, respect. Because I need you to understand something. That correction you made, it saved this mission. It saved us 8 months and $37 million in fuel correction burns. And the only reason I am standing here at 2 in the morning talking to a janitor is because I do not care about arrangements. I care about getting to Europa, and you, Arthur Vance, are the only person who has shown me how to do that. I sat down. My legs made the decision. The chair was one of those ergonomic ones that cost $800 and never felt comfortable. I did not care. I sat. I looked at my hands. They were rough, calloused. The hands of a man who fixed things with tools, not with keyboards. But they were also the hands that had written those 11 papers. The hands that had held Macy when she was born. The hands that had closed my wife's eyes for the last time. They were all the same hands. I had just forgotten that for a while. What do you want from me? I asked. Dr. Voss pulled up another chair. She sat across from me, close enough that I could smell her coffee. Black, no sugar, the same way I drank mine. I want you to come to a meeting, she said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Conference Room B. The entire Europa Clipper trajectory team will be there. I want you to explain what you did. I want you to show them. I want them to see what I see. And what do you see? She looked at me. Really looked at me, not through me, not past me, at me. I see the man who solved a problem that nobody else could solve, she said. I see someone who has been invisible for too long. And I see someone who is about to have a very difficult choice to make. I stood up. I turned the vacuum back on. The noise filled the room like a wall between us. "I will think about it," I said. But I already knew I would not go. The arrangement was broken, but I did not know how to exist outside of it yet. I went home that morning. I picked up Macy from my sister's house. I made her breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast with too much butter, the way she liked it. She sat at the kitchen table in her pajamas, the ones with the rockets on them, and she drew her picture for the night before. "Daddy," she said, "what do you really do at work?" I froze. The spatula was in my hand. The eggs were burning. I did not notice. "I told you," I said, "I clean things. I make sure everything is ready for the smart people when they come in the morning." She looked at me. Her eyes were brown like her mother's. They saw too much. They always had. "But the moon doesn't need cleaning," she said. "And you talk about the moon all the time. You told me about the ice on Europa. You told me about the volcanoes on Io. You told me things that the smart people don't even know yet. So what do you really do?" I turned off the stove. I sat down across from her. I looked at her drawing. It was different this time. Not a mop, not a bucket. A man standing in front of a whiteboard, a man pointing at numbers, a man who looked like me but taller, braver, visible. "I used to be one of the smart people," I said. "A long time ago, but they did not want me anymore, so I became something else. Something that was still useful, something that still mattered even if nobody saw it." Macy looked at her drawing. She looked at me. She said the thing that cut deeper than any adult line. "But I see you," she said. "I always see you. Even when you are invisible to everyone else." That nearly broke something in me. I did not give it the satisfaction. I went to the meeting. I do not know why. Maybe because of Macy. Maybe because of Dr. Voss's coffee. Maybe because of the latch on my father's toolbox that I still had not fixed. Maybe because the arrangement was already broken and I was tired of pretending it was not. Conference room B was exactly what I expected. A long table, a projector. 12 men and women in suits and lab coats who looked at me like I had walked into the wrong room. I was wearing my gray uniform. I had not changed. I did not own a suit. I had not worn one since my wife's funeral. Dr. Voss stood at the head of the table. She did not introduce me as the janitor. She introduced me as Arthur Vance, propulsion dynamics specialist. The room went quiet, not the quiet of respect, the quiet of confusion. The quiet of a machine that has encountered an unexpected input and does not know how to process it. "Arthur," she said, "please, show them what you showed me." I walked to the whiteboard. I picked up the marker. My hand was steady. I had not held a marker in front of people in 4 years, but my hand remembered. Muscle memory, like riding a bicycle. Like holding Macy's hand when we crossed the street. I wrote the equation, the same one from building 179, the I/O perturbation. I wrote it slowly. I explained each step. I did not use big words. I did not need to. The math spoke for itself. It always had. When I finished, I turned around. The room was different. The confusion was gone. In its place was something else. Recognition. The kind of recognition that comes when you see something true for the first time. One man in the back, a young engineer with a beard that looked like he was trying too hard, actually stood up. He walked to the board. He checked my work. He nodded. "It is correct," he said. "It is completely correct." Dr. Voss smiled. It was a small smile. The kind that does not reach the eyes because the eyes are too busy watching what happens next. "Thank you, Arthur," she said. "That will be all for now." I put the marker down. I walked out of the room. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked me to stay. The arrangement was broken, but the habits were still there. I was still the janitor. I still had 23 trash cans to empty. But something had shifted. I could feel it, like a fault line deep underground. You do not see it, you do not hear it, but you know it is there. You know that everything built on top of it is already changing, even if the change has not reached the surface yet. I was right. But I was wrong about what came next. I thought they would offer me a job. I thought they would ask me to join the team. I thought that finally, after 4 years of invisibility, someone would see me and say, "We need you." That is what happens in stories. That is what the American dream promises. Work hard, be good. Be patient, someone will notice. But that is not what happened. What happened was Dr. Richard Calloway. He was the deputy director of the Europa Clipper program. He had a corner office on the 4th floor of Building 180. He had a degree from MIT. He had a photograph on his desk of himself shaking hands with a senator. He had never spoken to me. He had never looked at me. But on November 14th at 9:23 a.m., he walked into Building 179 while I was changing a light bulb, and he said my name, Arthur Vance. I was on a ladder. I did not turn around. I finished screwing in the bulb. I climbed down. I faced him. "Dr. Calloway," I said, "can I help you with something?" He was wearing a suit that cost more than my truck. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. I could see my face in them, my gray uniform, my name tag, my invisibility reflected back at me. "I understand you have been providing assistance to the trajectory team," he said. He did not say helping. He said providing assistance, like I was a vending machine, like I was a tool that had been used without permission. "I corrected an error," I said. "That is all." "Yes," he said. "That is the problem. You see, Arthur, this is a highly classified program. The work we do here requires security clearances, background checks, proper credentials. You do not have any of those things. You are a janitor, and janitors do not touch whiteboards." I said nothing. I went very, very quiet. "Dr. Voss should not have brought you into that meeting," he continued. "She acted outside of protocol, and now there is a situation that needs to be managed." "What situation?" He smiled. It was the smile of a man who had never been told no. "The situation is that you have accessed classified material. You have altered official work product, and you have done so without authorization." "Do you understand what I am saying, Arthur?" I understood. I understood perfectly. I understood that the man in the $3,000 suit was afraid, not of me, not of what I knew. He was afraid of what I represented, a variable, an unknown, a man from Barstow with a broken toolbox and a Casio watch who had just proved that 12 PhDs were wrong and he was right. That was the real threat, not the security breach, the ego breach. "I understand," I said. "Good," he said. "Then you will also understand that we cannot have this irregularity. On the record, the program is too important. The stakes are too high. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You are going to forget what you saw. You are going to go back to mopping floors and emptying trash, and in exchange, we will not pursue any disciplinary action." He pulled a document from his jacket. It was 3 pages. He held it out to me. I did not take it. "And if I do not sign," his smile did not change, but his eyes did. They went cold. "Then we will have to review your employment status, and your access to the facility, and your daughter's health insurance. I believe she is covered under your plan, is she not?" I felt it. The part of me that had not forgiven anyone for anything in 4 years. The part that wanted to pick up my father's toolbox and throw it through his polished mirror shoes. I felt it. I did not honor it with a reaction. "I need to think about it," I said. "You have 24 hours, he said. He placed the document on the ladder I had been standing on. He walked out. He did not look back. I stood in Building 179 for 11 minutes. I did not move. I looked at the document. I looked at my hands. I looked at the Casio watch. 9:34 a.m. Macy was in school. She was probably drawing. Probably another picture of me. Another invisible man. Then I did something I had not done in 4 years. I called my father. He answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was rough. The voice of a man who had spent 31 years breathing copper dust. "Arthur, "Dad," I said, "I need to ask you something. You still driving that truck?" "Yes." "You still got my toolbox?" "Yes." "Then you already know the answer," he said. "You just do not want to hear it," I laughed. "A real one, the kind that surprises you." "How do you always know?" "Because I am your father," he said. "And because I spent 31 years being invisible to men in suits. And because the only thing I ever regretted was not speaking up sooner. Do not make my mistake, Arthur. Fix the latch." He hung up. I stood there holding the phone, listening to the dial tone. Then I folded the document. I put it in my pocket. I picked up my mop bucket. I went back to work. But I was not the same man who had walked in that morning. The arrangement was not just broken. It was dead, and I was going to bury it properly. I spent the next 6 days doing exactly what I had always done. I mopped. I emptied trash. I wiped whiteboards, but I also watched. I listened. I collected. The pocket notebook with the unicorn cover filled with details. Times, dates, names, conversations I was not supposed to hear, errors I was not supposed to see, and one thing more. One thing that changed everything. Dr. Calloway was not just protecting the program, he was protecting himself. The error on the whiteboard, the I/O perturbation miscalculation. It had not been an accident. It had been his work. His signature was on the original document. His approval was on the funding request for the 8-month correction burn. A correction burn that would have cost $37 million. A correction burn that would have required a contractor that was owned by his brother-in-law. I found it in the trash. A memo. Discarded, coffee-stained, but readable. A proposal from a company called Orion Dynamics, addressed to Dr. Calloway, dated 3 weeks before the whiteboard error appeared. Offering consulting services for trajectory anomaly resolution. The price tag was $2.3 million, upfront, non-refundable. He had created the problem so he could sell the solution. And when I solved it for free, I had cost him money. I had cost him status. I had cost him the one thing men like him cannot stand to lose: control. I sat in my truck for 14 minutes that night. I did not go inside. Macy was at my sister's. The house was dark. The moon was out. I looked at it. I thought about Europa. I thought about ice. I thought about a man who had tried to turn a journey to another world into a paycheck for his family. And I thought about what I was going to do about it. The answer came from Carlos. I found him at the guard station the next morning. He was eating his breakfast burrito. Egg, potato, no cheese. He looked at me. He did not ask his question. He already knew. "You are going to do something stupid," he said. "Probably," I said. "You need help." "I need a witness," I said. He finished his burrito. He wiped his hands on his uniform. "Then I will be there. But I will not say anything. You know my rule." "One question," I said. "One question," he agreed. "But I will wait until after to ask it." I nodded. I walked away. I had a plan. It was not a good plan. It was not a safe plan. But it was a plan. And it started with the whiteboard. On November 21st at 2:37 a.m., I wrote on the whiteboard in Building 179. Not an equation this time. A question, simple, direct, in letters large enough to read from the hallway. Why does Orion Dynamics charge $2.3 million to solve problems that do not exist? I signed it. Arthur Vance, night janitor, Building 179. Then I sat down. I waited. It did not take long. At 7:14 a.m. the day shift arrived. At 7:23 Dr. Voss saw it. At 7:31 she called security. At 7:45 Dr. Calloway arrived. At 7:52 he stood in front of the whiteboard, reading the words I had written, and his face went through 4 distinct colors in 6 seconds. I watched from the hallway. I was holding my mop bucket. I was invisible, I was furniture, but I was also the man who had written those words, and I was not going anywhere. "Who did this?" Dr. Calloway asked. His voice was loud, too loud. the loud of a man who is afraid and trying to sound angry. Dr. Voss looked at the board. She looked at the signature. She looked at me. Our eyes met. She knew. She had known for weeks. But she did not say my name. I do not know, she said, but I think we should find out. Erase it, Dr. Calloway said. Erase it now. This is vandalism. This is a security breach. This is a question, Dr. Voss said, and it is a question that deserves an answer. Do you have an answer, Richard? He turned to her. His face was still changing colors. Helen. You do not understand what is happening here. This is a smear campaign. This is a signature, she said. She pointed to my name. Arthur Vance, night janitor, building 179. I know this man. He corrected the I.O. perturbation. He saved us $37 million. And now he is asking why someone would want to waste that money. I think that is a very good question. Do you not? The room was full now. Engineers, administrators, people with cameras on their phones, the kind of cameras that record things, the kind of recordings that do not disappear. Dr. Calloway looked at the crowd. He looked at the whiteboard. He looked at me. For the first time, he really looked at me. You, he said, you did this. I stepped into the room. I set my mop bucket down. The sound of it hitting the floor was louder than it should have been. The room went quiet. The quiet of a courtroom, the quiet of a verdict. I did, I said. My voice was calm, precise, never loud. I wrote the question, and I will write it again if I need to, because I have been invisible for 4 years, Dr. Calloway, and I have learned something in that time. Invisible men see everything. We hear everything and we remember everything. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the memo, the coffee-stained proposal from Orion Dynamics. I held it up. I found this in the trash. 3 weeks before the I.O. error appeared on your whiteboard, addressed to you, from your brother-in-law's company, offering to solve a problem that did not exist yet. For $2.3 million, the room shifted. I could feel it. The way a crowd feels when a story changes direction, the way air feels before a storm. That is a lie, Dr. Calloway said. But his voice was different now, smaller. That is a forgery, that is. It is dated, I said. It is signed, it is on official letterhead, and it is in your handwriting, Richard. The same handwriting that approved the $37 million correction burn. The same handwriting that tried to make me sign a non-disclosure agreement 6 days ago. The same handwriting that threatened my daughter's health insurance if I did not go back to being invisible. I looked at him. I did not raise my voice. I did not gloat. I simply told the truth. The way a man tells the truth when he has nothing left to lose. You created the error, I said. You were going to sell the solution. You were going to take money from the American people and put it in your brother-in-law's pocket. And when I solved it for free, you tried to silence me. Because that is what men like you do. You do not build. You do not explore. You extract. You take things that do not belong to you and you sell them back at a markup. And you count on men like me to stay invisible while you do it. I paused. The room was completely still. I could hear the ventilation system. I could hear someone breathing in the back. I could hear my own heart. But I am not invisible anymore, I said, and neither is this. Dr. Calloway opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the crowd. He looked at the phones. He looked at Dr. Voss. She was not smiling. She was not angry. She was watching, waiting, seeing. This is not over, he said, but his voice was a whisper. It is for you, I said. He turned. He walked out. The crowd parted for him, not out of respect, out of something else. Disgust, maybe, or pity, or the simple human instinct to distance yourself from a man who has just been revealed. He walked down the hallway. His polished shoes made no sound on the carpet. The door closed behind him. He did not come back. I stood in the center of the room. I looked at the whiteboard. I looked at my name, Arthur Vance, night janitor, building 179. I picked up the eraser. I erased the question. I wrote something else. Smaller, simpler. The answer is nobody. Then I picked up my mop bucket, I walked out. The crowd did not part for me. They moved toward me. Hands reached out. Voices said things I did not process. Someone was crying. Someone was laughing. Someone was asking for my autograph. I kept walking. I had 23 trash cans to empty. The arrangement was dead, but the floors were still dirty. Carlos was waiting at the guard station. He was not eating a burrito. He was just standing there, watching the door. "You did it," he said. "I did," I said. He looked at me. He asked his question. "Do you feel better?" I thought about it. I thought about Macy. I thought about my father. I thought about the latch on the toolbox that I still had not fixed. I thought about the moon following us home. "No," I said, "but I feel right, and that is something." He nodded. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. The next morning, Dr. Voss found me in building 179. I was changing the same light bulb I had been changing when Dr. Calloway confronted me. She stood at the bottom of the ladder. She waited until I climbed down. "Arthur," she said, "I need to ask you something." "I am not going to work for you," I said. "I am not going to join the team. I am not going to put on a lab coat and pretend the last 4 years did not happen. I am a janitor. That is what I do. That is who I am, and I am done apologizing for it." She shook her head. "That is not what I was going to ask." "Then what?" She reached into her bag. She pulled out a folder. She handed it to me. I opened it. Inside was a letter, official NASA letterhead. Signed by the director of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. "We are creating a new position," she said. "Technical Integrity Officer, independent of any specific program. Reporting directly to the director. The job is to find problems before they become expensive, to ask questions that nobody else is asking. To be invisible when you need to be and visible when it matters. I recommended you. The director approved it. It pays $87,400 a year. It comes with full benefits. And it comes with something else." She reached into her bag again. She pulled out a small object, a Casio watch, newer than mine, but the same model, the same $22 watch from Walmart. "This one has a moon phase indicator," she said. "For Macy." I looked at the watch. I looked at her. I looked at the letter. I thought about all the things I had not fixed. The latch. The truck's check engine light. The way I had stopped talking about the things I loved. I thought about Macy's drawings, the mops, the buckets, the man in gray. "I will think about it," I said. But I already knew I would say yes. That was 3 months ago. Today is February 14th. Macy is 9 years old. She still draws pictures every night, but they are different now. A man standing on a ladder changing a light bulb. A man pointing at the moon. A man holding a toolbox with a broken latch. She still does not ask why. She just draws, and I still keep everyone. I took the job. I wear a badge now. Not a janitor's uniform, but not a lab coat either. Something in between. I have an office. It is small. It has a window that looks at the parking lot. I can see my truck from it. The 1998 Ford F-150, the toolbox on the passenger seat, the bungee cord holding it closed. I still have not fixed the latch. I will, someday, when I am ready. When the reminder is no longer necessary, when I have finally finished what I started. Dr. Calloway resigned. Officially, it was for personal reasons. Unofficially, everyone knows. The memo was leaked. The recording from someone's phone went viral. Not viral like a dance video. Viral like a story that people need to hear. A story about a man who was invisible until he was not. A story about a night janitor who saw what PhDs could not see. A story about a father who did what he had to do, not because he wanted glory, but because he had a daughter who saw him even when nobody else did. Macy came to work with me once. Last month. Bring your child to work day. She wore a dress with rockets on it. She brought her drawings. She showed them to Dr. Voss. Dr. Voss asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up. Macy thought about it. She looked at me. She looked at the whiteboard in my office. She looked at the moon through the window. I want to be invisible, she said, like my dad. But only when I want to be. Dr. Voss laughed. A real one, the kind that surprises you. That, she said, is the best answer I have ever heard. I walked Macy to the truck that evening. The sun was setting. The moon was already visible, pale and patient, waiting for night. Macy climbed into the passenger seat. She put her hand on the toolbox. She looked at the bungee cord. "Daddy," she said, "why don't you fix the latch?" I started the truck. The engine turned over on the third try the way it always did. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the toolbox. I looked at the moon. "Because some things," I said, "you leave broken so you remember what you are working toward." She nodded. She did not fully understand. She was 9 years old. She did not need to. Her innocent observation revealed the adult truth better than any explanation could. We drove home. The moon followed us. It always does. I do not know if it likes her. But I like to think it does. I like to think that somewhere out there on a moon covered in ice, there is a problem waiting to be solved. And when the time comes, I will be there. Visible or invisible, janitor or technical integrity officer. It does not matter what they call me. What matters is that I see, I remember, I fix what is broken. And I never, ever forget who I am doing it for. The truck made a noise it had never made before. I chose not to investigate that. Some mysteries can wait until morning. If this story stayed with you, join our family here by hitting like and subscribing. Real stories, real fathers, real strength. Thank you for being here.